step up, whether it's no labels or another third-party bid, would you then, dissuade a third party from running if it is someone like Larry Hogan, you named?
First of all, I just hope one of you asks a question about what people really care about. That's just a simple request. I've been here for 90 days, and you know how many people have asked me any of the questions that you guys have so far? Not one. They asked me about costs of living, they asked me about food and fuel, they asked me about healthcare, they asked me about Social Security, veterans benefits, homelessness, education. Gosh darn it, help me out a little bit. Please understand what the heck is going on here. And all of this focus and all the clickbait, I'm not pointing you out, but everybody, this is not what people care about right now. And I'll answer your question now, but I'm really getting sick of it. And the answer to the question is this. I will absolutely, I've already asked Cornel West and Jill Stein and RFK Jr. to come into the Democratic primary because we have to unify behind beating Donald Trump. I've said this 18,000 times. I'm only doing this to defeat Donald Trump. Nobody seems to want to do that in the Democratic Party right now, other than me, because Joe Biden can't, is my proposition, because the data says he can't. No one in the country right now cares. In fact, most of the people in the country are going to the Trump rally right now because he's listening to them. No one's asking about this stuff. I'm just frustrated. I hope you understand why I'm getting tired of it. You're doing your jobs, but you're not asking the questions that Americans give a shit about.
That's it. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Because when I'm in the White House, you are my family, and I hope I'm part of yours. I love you, Manchester. I love you, New Hampshire. I love you, Granite State. And my goodness, my friends, let's shock the world tomorrow night. Let's do it.
Hello, dear hearts and gentle people, reporting to you from Manchester, New Hampshire, on the eve of the primary, or technically now the day of the primary, as it is 2 a.m. So you saw that Dean Phillips clip, and this is why I am out in New Hampshire gathering this information, going to candidate events and talking to voters. Because I can guarantee you, and I looked for it, that bit with Dean Phillips really criticizing and taking the mainstream media to task cannot be found anywhere in the mainstream media. To me, candidates have these things called press gaggles, where the press kind of gaggle around a candidate and ask him these basic canned questions. To me, the most interesting part of the entire Dean Phillips press gaggle was that he took the press to task. And this is why I wanted to do this work, and Phillips makes such a good point. The mainstream news, without really being invested in this race in a substantive level, simply ask the same 5 or 6 questions to all of these candidates over and over and over. And yes, strategy is important, and I am very interested in strategy. And of course, I'm interested to seeing who might run third party and who might not. But you don't need to ask that question more than once to a candidate. And once you hear their response, do you need to ask them over and over? Instead, why don't you ask them about the issues? Why don't you ask them about what they stand for? And the reason you ask them what they stand for, in addition to just understanding the substance of the issues, is to understand their campaign strategy and why they might be catching fire. So hello again on the eve of the primary. Today I went to 2 Democratic candidate events, one for Dean Phillips and one for Marianne Williamson. And today I decided to focus on the Democratic Party because as I've been out here, I kind of became inspired, and I have a new mission in tow. And what I realized that the most useful purpose I could serve in terms of covering this primary race journalistically is giving voters substantive information and letting them know about all the candidates, not just Donald Trump and Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, but also and Joe Biden, but also Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips, to really let voters know that there actually is a choice in this primary season. And if I could just increase that awareness, because I'm an advocate of democracy and an advocate of having all candidates and having all of their voices be heard, then I feel like I've served my purpose. So I feel like it's been a very successful visit. Of course, we have one more day, but a lot of really good, juicy information in this video. So I probably won't analyze for too much, only to say that, in my opinion, it is not the Republican race, but the Democratic Party primary race in New Hampshire is actually the race to watch. Everybody sees that Nikki Haley is kind of sinking in the polls, not doing nearly as well as she was even doing 2 weeks ago. The third place in Iowa finish didn't help. But if you look at the Democratic Party side, Dean Phillips is polling now at 30%. Marianne Williamson only at about 6%. So he seems to be running away as the most viable alternative to Biden. But with those poll numbers, and if he gets anything above 25%, then it will be a real Democratic primary race. And if he could get that good of a percentage with this mainstream media blackout and with very few voters knowing about him, then that would be a very successful outcome. And he would be a serious contender for the presidential nomination. So we have a lot of really good, interesting, juicy tidbits. One thing to stick around for, which is particularly interesting, is I got Scientology in the presidential campaign lexicon. I was able to ask Marianne Williamson, would she appoint an IRS chair who would revoke the tax status of Scientology? She said yes. So we officially have a presidential candidate who would hire an IRS chair specifically to revoke the tax exempt status of Scientology. So that's kind of cool. I hope as I go into South Carolina and ask other candidates other questions, I'll ask them that question as well and get the tax revocation status of Scientology on the presidential campaign agenda. Because remember, Scientology does oftentimes intersect with politics. Think about the race between Karen Bass and I can't believe Rick Caruso. Think of the race between Karen Bass and Rick Caruso for mayor of Los Angeles. And towards the last week, the two of them battled it out as to who was less supportive of Scientology. And Karen Bass got a lot of egg on her face and a video being replayed over and over for her praising Scientology. So I just say this to say that Scientology can be part of the political conversational lexicon if there are journalists who try to push that and fight against the grain and are not afraid of Scientology fair gaming them. And since I've already been fair gamed, I am not too fearful of that. So really interesting substantive moment from Dean. And Dean has a really great point. I think he even cursed and said they were asking shitty questions. And isn't that true? Because voters don't care about no labels or what's going to happen in 9 months. They care about the substance of what these candidates are talking about. And if they are viable candidates to vote for, and viable doesn't mean has the mainstream media anointed them. Viable doesn't mean has the state Democratic Party anointed them, has Joe Biden anointed them. Viable means, are they substantive? Would they be strong in a general election? So if you're watching me, we're going to chew on it. We're going to chew on the meat. It's not just no labels bullshit. But this is going to be a really interesting primer of the two alternate candidates. So we'll start with Dean Phillips. This is my second time going to his event. He appears to be go increasingly to the left, which I think is a smart move. And this little tidbit I really like. There was this gentleman, I have an interview with him, so you'll be able to check that out. And this gentleman asked about obesity and said it's one of the hidden crises of America. And Dean Phillips, even though he didn't expect this question, had a really interesting and substantive answer about obesity. And it's a health crisis that people should be paying attention to in the long term. So I'm glad he knows a lot about it and he has a tangible plan for it. So that's kind of interesting.
We should be investing in American health. You know that our life expectancy is declining in this country? Obesity rates are rising, diseases of despair climbing, opioid addiction rampant, and we don't have a mental health system or emotional health system. We don't look at addiction as a health issue, we look at it as a criminal issue, and we subsidize the very terrible ingredients that are making people ill. I'm different. I don't care what the politics say, I don't care what the parties say. Let's follow the facts, follow the data, reform the Farm Bill to give incentives to farmers to grow food that actually keep people healthier, right? Fitter, and live more wonderful lives. And that's what we should be doing. And then we may make sure that those things are available in every community in this country, rural areas, urban areas, suburban areas, right?
And big pharma, big pharmaceutical companies. Dean Phillips, as well as Marianne Williamson, really in the entire presidential race, are the only two candidates with the balls to directly challenge big pharma. So again, if you want to be an appealing candidate in the general election, it's pretty simple. Go against the mainstream establishment, whether that be politically speaking or talking about corporations. Of course, one of the biggest corporations that have undue influence and are jacking up prices, that would be the big pharmaceutical companies. So this has been a trending topic, I think, in the internet world that candidates haven't necessarily glommed onto, except for Dean Phillips. And I say this because thematically, Phillips is running a very forward-thinking campaign looking into the future. First, he brought up universal basic income and his support for that, which garnered the support of Andrew Yang. Then he talked about how to deal with artificial intelligence effectively, and now he's talking about this. So his pitch seems to be more directed towards younger voters who would be more inspired to vote and not necessarily write in Biden. So I think that's very smart that he's kind of zeroing in and being this forward-thinking candidate and speaking a language that a lot of other candidates aren't speaking in. So you can see why he's now getting 30% in the polls and may very well do well in New Hampshire.
I just think he's the most reasonable candidate there is. And I don't want to see a Trump-Biden rematch, I'm sure. And he actually talks about policy. And that's what's important to me, and that's what should be important to everybody else.
And these two young gentlemen encapsulate the ire of the effort to write in Joe Biden. And again, talking about the structure of the New Hampshire primary real quick, the situation is Joe Biden is not on the ballot because the National Democratic Committee wanted to change the schedule of the primary to have a more diverse state, or really that's code for more Biden-friendly state, be first in the nation for the primary, even though it's written in the New Hampshire Constitution ever since 1948 that they legally have to have the first in the nation primary. So there's this weird, bizarre effort that Biden is trying to do where the Biden campaign isn't even trying to tell people to write him in, but they're making phone calls to the heads of the state Democratic New Hampshire party to elicit and create this write-in campaign. So it's very bizarre. And you see these two young men just not buying into really any of the bullshit, and they have this great poster saying, "Where's Biden?" And as you can see, they're annoyed that Biden hasn't come to the state, and that's going to be a constant theme. And that's why I think Dean Phillips and even Marianne Williamson will do much better than people initially think, because there's so many voters that are angry that Biden has ignored them and has decided not to show up here, and has even decided to invalidate their votes. Ultimately, right now, the National Democratic Party is saying that the delegates allocated in New Hampshire will not be counted, that the state party will choose them later, but that is rife for a challenge in the Supreme Court. So right now, the tangible results of the New Hampshire primary is unknown as to whether these candidates will actually get delegates or not. But I'll sure tell you, if there's a lawsuit that goes to the Supreme Court, perhaps, that's going to be a lot of visibility for Marianne and Dean Phillips. So there's no reason not to fight in New Hampshire.
All right, first, tell me about your side. Your side's pretty badass.
I love it. I mean, I don't know where Joe is. I don't think Dean knows where Joe is either.
Nowhere to be found. We also went down to Yangat, and then recently Cornell West and Dean Phillips have been appealing, so I'm just kind of engaging now.
So that's it. I'm glad speaking to you guys. So you think for yourselves clearly.
Yes.
So let's say it's Dean Phillips, Cornell West is there, Trump, RFK, Dean Phillips, I assume, right? So, but let's say it's Biden, more likely, Trump, Cornell West. Do you see yourself supporting Cornell West?
100%.
And see, you can see with that second young man, which is why Phillips would be such a stronger general election candidate, and even Marianne. There are some Cornell West right now. He's you probably know him. He has the interesting beard, the Princeton professor, who's a well-known media figure. He's currently polling at 6% of the vote, and there are a lot of young people like this well-informed young man who feel that Cornell West stands for what he stands for and has enough vigor and has enough charisma to be an effective leader. And also Dean Phillips, but he wouldn't necessarily go for Joe Biden. And this is a prime example. There are a lot of people that are waiting to vote for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., waiting to vote for Jill Stein, waiting to vote for Cornell West if Joe Biden is a nominee. They're not going to vote for Trump, but they don't want to vote for Biden and feel he's been an awful president, as many as 67% of Americans do. So there's certainly good company in that regard. And this is the gentleman who asked the obesity question, very well informed, and he's kind of made it his mission to go around and ask different candidates their opinions on this kind of hidden issue that nobody's talking about. And he was kind of won over and said that Dean had one of the best responses. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Dean Phillips is my top choice right now. Absolutely. And I love how he said he's open to change. Not all leaders are open to change, and that's what makes America America. That's what makes us unique. We are adaptable to change, and that's what we need in our country.
Finally, Dean is asked if he doesn't win, which is probably the case, what will he do? And what I loved is he turned that answer into a generational argument and said essentially he'd like to help out the wonderful young activists that he met in New Hampshire and invest in the new generation. And again, this is the thing that the mainstream media is not covering. They asked Dean Phillips, no labels. Are you going to run third party? Are you going to hurt Biden? No labels. They're not asking him, well, what's the general theme of your campaign? What's the strategy? Why is this smarter in a general election? These are the questions that I'm asking. But you can see the smart approach that Dean takes when somebody asks him this simple question, and he turns it into a broader issue as to how he wants to invest in a younger political generation and get a lot of the old fuddy-duddies out. Again, a strong, effective selling point. It's so interesting. The mainstream media hates Donald Trump this much, why the hell are you protecting Joe Biden? Doesn't really make any sense when you have two excellent candidates waiting in the wings.
I want to be your mentor. I want to be your friend. I want to help inspire you because, my goodness, I've got daughters in their 20s right now. Many of you in this room the same age. I have that responsibility to them, to you, what is your name? Adozi, thank you. That's my responsibility. I did give up my career in Congress. I knew I could have stayed around there probably just as long as some of the people I've mentioned before. But I don't think that's in this country's best interest. I think we need term limits, in fact, 18 years in the House and Senate and 18 years on the Supreme Court. For two reasons, because we need independent-minded thinkers, and we need to clear some space so people from your generation can participate. Every one of these people I've talked about, even good people, they have prevented sometimes 3 generations of leaders from even having a chance to run for office because they just think it's so important for them to stick around. It's wrong. I'm going to help in some way or another, but I think something's telling me we might be doing this for at least 4 years.
Then from Manchester off to Hooksett, New Hampshire to check out Marianne Williamson as she brings it home. And I love the atmosphere of kind of the final day. You know, everything is on the line. I always say politics, particularly elections, is sort of the sport of the human mind in a lot of ways. And it's you can just feel the atmosphere, everybody kind of bringing it home. So Marianne had a great event. Her attendance, last time there was only about 5 people at her event. This time there are about 200. So she was able to get those numbers up again, which is great. Dean Phillips also had about 200. So crowd-wise, they're similar. But this is an interesting bit where Marianne might have lost an opportunity. And one of the efforts that some anti-Israel people are advocating for, instead of voting for Dean Phillips or Marianne Williamson or, of course, Joe Biden, they want people in support of Palestine. I was in East Palestine recently. Palestine to write in ceasefire, which seems kind of dumb. But here's an interesting facet of this. I was watching Breaking Points, which I like, and they're kind of an alternative alternative to the mainstream news on YouTube. And Crystal Ball, one of the pundits there, was saying that Marianne might have lost an opportunity because she wasn't as extreme as she could have been on the Israel-Palestine situation. And I thought I thought her answer was pitch perfect and very level-headed and wasn't nearly as reflexively supportive of Israel as anybody on the GOP or even close. But the fact that her language hasn't been as tough as some hardcore progressives might have wanted it to be, she lost an opportunity to get a lot of those hard left progressives, and Dean Phillips isn't really trying to get that either. So I thought that was very interesting, particularly that she did call Hamas a terrorist organization. I think that's pretty reasonable to call Hamas a terrorist organization. I think it's also reasonable to say that Israel was committing terroristic acts against Palestine. I don't see why you can't choose two at once, but you can see the rigidity of some of the far left activists. That Marianne Williamson's response on this, even though she has the most leftward response on the Israel-Palestine situation, was still not good enough for them. And because of that, they're doing this weird write-in ceasefire thing. So you'll get to see her answer, Marianne's answer, on the ceasefire situation.
The response that Israel has given, the carpet bombing of hospitals and cutting off major utilities, is that also not considerably an act of terrorism? Is my question.
Well, it is an act of war, and I do not agree with that war. I do not agree with and I believe that there needs to be an immediate ceasefire. And I've stood for an immediate ceasefire for the moment that videos where I talked about how there should not be an invasion of Gaza. We need an immediate ceasefire. We need an immediate release of the remaining hostages, and we need immediate architecture for a two-state solution. There never was a military solution in this issue, and there is not a military solution now. And now we are at a point where, Netanyahu again said it, that he is not open to a two-state solution. And unfortunately, he has been moving to the right. There are American presidents who tried. Clinton tried. I'll tell you, the American president who had this right was Jimmy Carter. This had been 20 years ago. And I were president, he would have been my Middle East liaison, because we should have been saying much louder publicly, this cannot continue. These settlements are illegal. The occupation of the West Bank is illegal. The siege and the blockade. The United States our highest ally must be humanity itself. Our highest allegiance must be, when our Declaration of Independence says all men are created equal, that's not just all Americans either. We should have an equally robust commitment to the peace and the security and the sovereignty of both peoples. Now, when it comes to this international consortium, which is going to be necessary to create a two-state solution, the United States cannot be the leader of that, but the United States can be a passionate and vigorous participant.
And here is the Scientology bit. I will apologize in advance. I do not have video for it. I have audio. And the reason I do not have video for it is because I'm a technological schmuck. Meaning, I was doing a live stream with my YouTube when I asked her, Marianne, the question about Scientology and revoking and appointing an IRS chair to revoke the tax-exempt status. And I was doing it with my phone. I assumed that with a live stream, you could download it and put it on the video. Oddly enough, on a short live stream, you could do that, which I did with Dean Phillips. You cannot do that with a long live stream. I did not know that. So I got the audio on my DSLR camera, which is pretty good, but I did not get the video because I got the video on my phone, but I'm unable to access that footage, which is a big bummer. If somebody knows how to do that, because I'm really, sometimes I feel like I was born in 1925. I really don't understand technology terribly well. I'm an old fuddy-duddy in that regard. So if you could tell me how to do that, let me know. But at least you have the audio, and it's just black of me asking the question. And then when Marianne answered, I'd splice some other Marianne footage to make it seem like she was talking. So at least there's some relevant footage. But I do apologize. But hey, at least the question was asked. That is on the record. So here's the exciting moment where a presidential candidate addresses appointing an IRS chair specifically to revoke the tax-exempt status of Scientology. So I thought that was at least cool that I was able to get that in the presidential conversational lexicon.
This is a strange question. It's not a gotcha question or anything like that, but it's one that hasn't been asked before. So last event I explained I was a journalist. I got fired for kind of speaking the truth about Scientology. And I ask you this only because you could get this viral moment because it has such a following in the internet. Would you potentially support an IRS chair who would revoke the tax-exempt status from Scientology? They're worth billions of dollars. They're under investigation for child labor trafficking. So it's an issue. You're the one that often speaks truth to power. So I'm wondering, maybe you have to do some more research, but would you be open to potentially appointing that IRS chair so they could revoke that tax-exempt status?
First of all, I support any investigation of any organization that is cheating the American people and doing wrong by anyone.
Well put.
Been in the kind of field that I've been in, anyone who's lived in California as I have, is not like, oh, what could you possibly be talking about? Right. No, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room do. Investigation seems legitimate. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Got my support.
And here's a state rep who had a lot of guts in supporting Marianne Williamson. In New Hampshire, there are a ton of state reps. I think there are like 200, so there are a lot. But it takes... you're essentially sacrificing your career if you endorse somebody against Biden in this Democratic primary. But I really like this guy, and at the end, he challenges the state party chair, Raymond Buckley. And Raymond Buckley has been chair of the New Hampshire Democratic Party, I think, for over 2 decades. And if you know the Tammany Hall era in the early 1900s, where machine politics kind of controlled everything, told you who to vote for, Raymond is kind of the modern embodiment of the modern Tammany Hall that is alive and well in New Hampshire. So I admire this state rep. And he's been on the scene before. I think he has a real future ahead of him. I hope he runs for governor or something because, set the politics aside, I admire people who go against the grain and fight for the little guy if they feel like the little guy is worth fighting for, despite the career repercussions. I always like the renegades. I always like the ones that go by the wayside. So I have a lot of respect for him. and really liked kind of his answer as to why he's supporting Marianne.
Really well put. And so you're an elected official, so there's some risk in endorsing Marianne. Have you gotten any pushback from some people in the state committee party?
There's definitely a lot of pressure to any state representative to support the Right in Biden campaign or just stay quiet. But I think it's clear to anyone with half a brain that Biden not putting his name on the ballot means that we're risking 4 electoral votes as Democrats. So to me, the state committee is making a serious bluster, and has been ever since Ray Buckley has been allowed to continue to be chair of the Democratic Party. So hopefully we can get a new state committee, one that reflects the people of this state and effectively fights for us on national level.
And here's another voter that just felt jettisoned by Biden not coming to New Hampshire and now is a big, enthusiastic Marianne Williamson supporter.
Well, I think if he wants to seriously poll, he should be here. Or, if he wants people to vote for him, he should be here. It's always a really fun thing. First in the nation, New Hampshire, all the politicians come out. He should be here, and he should be pleading his case.
And finally, we have somebody cool, Laura Loomer. Laura Loomer, you might know her. I heard her name and recognized her when she was there. She, some might say, is a January 6th agitator or a general political agitator. She's a lot of fun. She is very close with Trump. She might even be Trump's next press secretary. They are very good friends. She flew on Trump's private plane to Iowa, so she is 1,000% pro-Trump. But because of the January 6th stuff and a lot of different stuff, she's been banned off YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and almost everything else. Although on Rumble, I think she has like almost 1 million followers. So she's a really well-known figure. And also the one of the few journalists, because she is a journalist, even though she's a very biased one, that is actually traveling to these different places like me and getting some on-the-ground coverage. I'm one of the few people to do it, and Laura has a much bigger fan base. I really liked her, completely disagree with everything she said, and she was trying to hold Marianne Williamson to task and see if she would pardon the January 6ers, which, of course, Marianne said she would not, because I think it's pretty unnecessary. Although, Laura has a point where with all the people at January 6th, yes, should they have spent a week or two in jail, but should they have spent 6 months if nobody was hurt and it wasn't that rash of a crime? And that's kind of the logic that she made as well. If the Democrats are wanting to arrest less people for nonviolent crimes, well, then you could argue some would argue violent, but I would say if there was little violence that occurred, if the person was nonviolent, then why did they spend so long in prison? So I think she actually does have a point, even though I completely disagree with January 6th and feel it's a radical, insane, butthurt resurrection. Ultimately, that's really what it was. A resurrection of the butthurt, in my opinion, over claims that the election was stolen, which I do not believe in. Although I have a lot of commenters, a lot of people who are fans of Trump who have been explaining to me why they feel that the election was stolen. And another idea that I have, let me know and comment if you want to be one of them. I was thinking about having a live stream with a cadre of Trump supporters that watch my YouTube, and they'll bring their best material. I was thinking maybe having like 2 or 3 people, and we'll just debate why I think the election was not stolen and why they think the election was stolen. I think that would be fun to create that conversation. But I think my YouTube probably in terms of followers is 40% Trump followers. So again, I'm one of the few YouTubers with a politically diverse fan base. So liked Laura a lot, completely disagree with her, but she kind of explained why she's at the Marianne Williamson event. And I have her interview in here because she's almost this professional meddler, and you could see that Joe Biden's efforts to silence his opponent is giving fuel to the fire for the Republicans, because the Republicans keep pushing back and saying, well, why isn't the Democratic Party being democratic with this? And look at these 2 other far superior candidates. Why are they not getting attention? This is the corrupt Democratic Party mainstream media narrative. So it completely buys them shutting Marianne and Dean out completely plays into the Republicans' hands. And if the Democrats say, well, Trump is undemocratic with January 6th and trying to overturn the election, they have less credence when the Democrats are trying to fix their own primary election. So the more you silence these candidates, the more fuel you give to the fire of people like Laura, who is really good at what she does and completely knows what she's doing. And I don't think you want to mess with her, but a really interesting character and somebody I think I'll continue to have some conversations with in the future. Fun to get to know.
So I go to all of the different events. I've been to Trump events, I've been to the Banks events, I've been to Nikki Haley's events until she called the cops on me. I tried going to Phillips' event tonight, and then I went to Marianne's event. So I just wanted to, I like asking questions about things that are going on that maybe the corporate media isn't reporting on, but the people deserve to know about. And so I was wanting to know how the Democrat Party, and especially the Democrat candidates running in this primary, feel about the fact that the Democrat Party is actually directing their voters, their donors, to donate and support and give money to Republicans like Nikki Haley, who are just Democrats in disguise. They're Democrats in jag, Democrats in heels. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Sponsored by Boeing. But I just found it to be quite bizarre and wanted to know how the Democrats felt about it. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of the fact that people like Obama, who work with Joe Biden, and their advisors, who like to say that they're community organizers and progressives, are literally uniting with the war machine and uniting with corporate America and the establishment uniparty donor class to support Nikki Haley, and also to try to undermine people's vote within the Democrat Party. We don't like that in the Republican Party. We don't like when the party tries to decide. They tried to do this recently, and it was very obvious that they tried to deny people the right to vote for Trump, right? And when you do that, it just makes people more popular. And so I'm not a hypocrite, and I think that Democrats should have the right to vote for who they want to vote for too. And it's my right to support Trump, just like I support Trump. But it's not right for the Democrats to be told, oh, the Democrat Party says you're only going to vote for Biden, and that's it. I mean, the guy is like a walking Alzheimer's patient. He's incoherent, and he's illegitimate in my eyes.
A lot of people feel that way, yeah.
I was telling Marianne, I've never met a Biden supporter in my life.
So that's my analysis. Thank you guys for your continued support and for watching continuously. Tomorrow, I'm going to definitely try to make Trump's event. I'm actually going to try to do a few election night events because I think they're all in Manchester within walking distance of each other. So I'll probably live stream from a few of them. Last housekeeping stuff. If people know how to live stream from YouTube directly with a better camera, let me know. People who are more tech savvy, that would be helpful. I tried StreamYard as well. StreamYard, the camera seems to be worse, but maybe the camera's just bad from my side of the phone versus the side that people are actually looking at. But let me know, because the audio is bad on the phone, although it seemed to be decent enough, though there's some problems still. The audio doesn't seem to be great, and the picture is really bad. So I'd like, or there's a way to live stream from my DSLR camera. I don't know if you have to buy a plug. There are two donors that are kind enough with the GoFundMe. I think I raised about $150. I bought a mic, $100. So I could probably buy a cable with the other $50 that I raised. So if there's a way to do that, where you can plug in a cable somehow to your DSLR and it goes live, I doubt there's any way to do that. Maybe you can plug it into your phone. Again, I'm living in the Stone Age, and I'm an old soul. But if there's a way to do that, let me know. But thank you guys again for following. I've had such a great time in the campaign trail. Appreciate all the encouragement. Plan is we will go to South Carolina if there's still a race, and then on to LA to cover the Leah Remini lawsuit. Final predictions in New Hampshire, and I'll do one. It's about 3 a.m. now, but I'll do one when I wake up tomorrow about 3 p.m., give or take, and have a more substantive prediction. But Haley just isn't doing what she is doing to build the momentum. She's regressed as a candidate. She started off as personable, as more human. She attacked Vivek, which made her seem kind of strong and badass and tough, and she didn't run with it. She should have taken that ball, and she should have ran with it. She's become too calculated, too careful. 2 polls 2 weeks ago had her directly tied with Trump. Now she's 11 points behind. I think, 4 days ago I said Nikki Haley will win. I don't think Nikki Haley's going to win anymore being on the ground, talking to people who are not actually that enthusiastic. I think Haley's going to get crushed by Trump, get crushed by 10 points. I think Haley's going to drop out in 5 days from now. I honestly do. I think Haley's going to drop out before South Carolina. Why get egg in your face in that regard? If she doesn't, I will follow her, because there's nothing more entertaining than watching a dying campaign. It's like watching a car wreck in slow motion, and it's this psychologically fascinating event. And I just love the atmosphere. It's high stress, high times, and to kind of be a fun observer, observing it with you all, looking from the trees is a fun experience. But yeah, I think this primary is over, and it's sad. And I'm going to do a final video after the New Hampshire primary, talking about the death tragically, of the presidential primary, that we're becoming less democratic of a country in conjunction with the way the mainstream media acts, and also the new internet worlds where people don't go to events as much. People don't go to in-person things because everything's on the internet. And people think more like a cult because they'll look at internet comments and groups and people start conversing with each other who are like-minded, and they'll all start thinking the same, and therefore the winner is already set up in the beginning. You saw a little bit of that in 2020 with Joe Biden. I always thought it was bizarre that I know Pete Buttigieg got bought off, but it's always bizarre that Pete Buttigieg wins a state and then decides not to run in Super Tuesday. Like, who the hell are you? You win an early state and then you drop out. So, our primary was stolen from us in 2020. Our primary is stolen from us in 2024, and I say the more primaries, the better, but I think they are essentially dead, which is really, really sad. The end of an American institution. So we'll talk further about that, but I will see you guys tomorrow. As for now, I'm going to run to Dunkin' Donuts, walk the dog, and finally get some sleep, probably finally crash out at about 4:30 in the morning. But this has been fun. Thank you all, guys, for your support. Thank you to the new subscribers, whether you're from Aaron, whether you're a Trump supporter, whether you're a Biden loyalist. Hey, I have a good amount of Biden. Laura Loomer said she couldn't find anybody who supports Biden. I found 10 comments on my YouTube that people like Biden. There's only 10. I think more people on my YouTube like Dean and Marianne than they even like Biden. But it's fun. It's fun to have a diverse group of political people talking with all of you guys. And we will have a lot of conversations in the future. And I ask you to sleep well. Have a wonderful night. Bye-bye. And happy election watching. Take care.